right into it. And, first, thank you for the opportunity and welcome everyone on this somewhat early morning for some people, although the virtual aspect makes it a little easier on us. And, there's a daunting task as a blind man. How am I going to relate to your putting the pieces together in this goal of, membership retention and attraction and marketing and a whole host of things that you want to accomplish? And the answer is two parts. The first part is that this day is dedicated to a lot of topic experts that are going to do a much better job in some of those specifics than I am. And my role is to add some value to approaches to those things and maybe some insights into approaches on those things that will help not just on this day, but on a lot of things personally, professionally, and philanthropically, which is the heart of this goal. So what I will share is that I have three key goals that I hope to get out of this meeting. And the first, ironically, some people think, is to understand the power inherent in a shared vision, right? The more we can collect a single vision that we select by putting together all of our various perspectives to understand what is the best path and then how we can all embrace it to get to the places we want to go is important. A second is how do we manage adversity? In fact, how do we use adversity as a catalyst for growth and positivity? In fact, even to look at the notion of positive adversity as something we can create and use in our everyday lives. And finally, I want to take a deeper look into the benefits of working well with a team. And when we do that, how we can all reach for our peak potential. And that's going to come pretty clear as we go through my life and my journey. So that's really my fundamental goal is I want us to take a journey together. And in that journey, I hope we're going to have some fun on that way, but I expect there'll be some laughter and some other powerful emotions. I want people to be thinking and maybe to come away with some things that will resonate with them to put to use as they go forward. But that is up to the people who hear and receive it and choose to take action. And we're all facing these challenges right now, right? In many ways, right? Our world is divisive right now, more so than many of us have ever experienced. We've got COVID-19 influence, the virtual reality that Dennis is helping us work through so much. And in my part, one of the challenges that comes from that is normally I step up to a podium or to a platform where my guide dog would guide me, and she would charm you all with her beauty and her skill at guiding me, kind of giving you some insight to the fact that I am blind, but also letting you see how much working as a team enables us to do things people don't fully appreciate all the time. So I don't get that benefit when I'm presenting virtually. I just stand here with some headphones on. But I also don't get a detriment, right? Because she used to, as soon as I start speaking, lay down and fall asleep, which might lure some of you into the temptation that sounds like a pretty good idea here. But I missed that notion. And it's a double difficulty for me because on September 5th, my guide dog suddenly and unexpectedly passed away from cancer. She had it on her spleen. And this isn't a time where I can get another guide dog right now. That will change, but I've got a while. But like many adversities, as you're going to hear, I didn't let that stop us in some ways because I miss my dogs more than my guides. So we adopted a rescue pup, my wife and I, so that our home does have a lot of the warmth that we want from having a dog there, right? So even in the midst of challenge, right, you have some choices that you're going to face. And that's a theme in my life, right, is that I never want to be defined by the challenge. I want to be defined by the choices I make. And I think that's a healthy approach for all of us. So let's start that journey, you see, because while I am totally blind, I was not always sight impaired at all. I grew up in Nashua, New Hampshire initially, and eventually in Colebrook, New Hampshire. So I bookended the state, and I was fully sighted. And I never expected to lose my sight. What I did expect is I was very engaged, very involved. And by being involved, I got a lot of rewards. And I learned a few lessons, 4 that I want to highlight because they helped me not only at the time while I was growing up, but they helped me in my transition to blindness, and they help me today. So how we look at those lessons, I think, is really pivotal. First, one of the most important lessons I ever learned is by being involved, you learn what you like. And knowing what you enjoy, knowing what's fun is so valuable to us, even as adults, because fun has a couple of roles. First off, you try to motivate yourself to do as many things as you do enjoy. Make that be part of the direction in your life, and you are generally going to be happier. But also, when you are facing challenges, what a great way to recharge, to know what's fun because you've tried many different things and can find out what's going to help you feel better. And one of the lessons in that people often forget is when they're struggling, they can often recharge with something fun. But that's sort of like that's like putting oil in your car after the engine is seized. It'll help, but it would have been better if you could have done it all the way. Give your body maintenance all the time. Include things that you enjoy as a regular part of your day. And then you don't get as quickly worked into those stress levels that are overwhelming, right? I guess we want to operate on the whelming level, whatever that means. But what's fun is first lesson. Second, by being engaged and involved, I started learning in all these things, where are my skills? Where are my strengths? Because you can always use that knowledge to play to your strengths. Use what you're good at to help yourself and those around you with those skills. And at the same time, you're sort of learning what you're not as good at, what you might need to work on. And you realize also that you can work on your strengths and improve them too. There's an expression, practice makes perfect. And I don't subscribe to that because I don't know what perfect looks like. And that's not because I'm blind. It's because perfect is so hard to measure. What I know is progress is something we can measure and celebrate. So I like the expression, practice makes progress. The more we work at things, the better we are likely to get. And we can celebrate those milestones. And if we only celebrate at the achievement of some final destination of perfection, we are never going to get to celebrate. But if we have milestones all along the way that we can celebrate, it helps continually motivate us. Third thing I learned by being involved and engaged is you start having to work with people. And the beauty of that is you start learning the value of team. And team is an acronym, TEAM. Together, everyone achieves more. It's actually a couple of acronyms. I'll take a deeper dive into it a little later. But that first notion is when we learn to work together well, we can accomplish a lot more because we bring in all the different strengths to compensate for areas of weakness. And we bring in different perspectives of looking at a problem to maybe come up with the best solution from all of those. If you only look at it one way, you might miss an obvious. And that's the benefit. Now, sometimes there's a temptation to say, well, I'm having trouble working with this team, and I think I'd be better off to do it just myself. And that may be true in the moment. But the problem with that mindset is that if you do that, you work well for yourself for that moment, you get through that one problem, but you're always going to be trapped without having to work with a team. You have another opportunity. You could practice makes progress, learn how to work well with a team, because then you will always have the benefit of working with that team, and where their strengths might cover up some of the things you're not as good at, where their perspective might show you something you might have missed, because we all are going to miss things. It's part of the imperfect world we live in, and we are. Now, a key part of working together as a team came about with the fourth thing I want to share. Well, let me thank all of you for your patience out there. I'm still going to hold on just a little bit since we had 100. That means we're at 20% of who is here. And I'd like to give a little more courtesy for those since we all didn't expect this. It's kind of a great example of exactly the problem-solving nature we have to take, right? Things are a little more challenging, and we have a couple of choices of how to respond when they do, right? And I apologize for the extra impact on your time as well, but thanks for your patience. We'll get it right on track. I think in about 2 minutes, we'll start either way. Does that sound good with you? And that's great, and I'll appreciate that. But problems are acceptable to me, right? We grow in our failures. Even, neurological studies, right? We learn more from a failure, and we learn more when we come back from a failure and succeed. And our brain grows more. So failures are always temporary as long as we don't quit. And I've got 8:56 now, so I'm going to launch into this. So if you piece back together, here's a good start point to put on your video. But so obviously we had a little setback as we lost our connection, and I was going over the 4 points of things I learned when I was a student that helped me then, helped me as I transitioned into my total blindness, and helped me today so that I want to share them. And just quick reflection. The first one was, what do we enjoy? The second one was, what are your strengths? And in that, I got into this notion that, we can work on our strengths, we can work on our weaknesses. Both will improve if we work on them, right? It's not practice makes perfect, but I think better looked at as practice makes progress. The more we work on things, the better we'll get. And that gives us the advantage that we can measure progress, which gives us points to celebrate. And all those celebration of the milestones, the waypoints along the way, are helpful in our motivation, because if we only have success and celebration when we achieve an end goal that could be too far away, we can often lose motivation. And the goal is to keep ourselves moving forward with motivation towards whatever destination we're trying to reach. And I think celebrations help, which is why I think practice makes progress as a mindset helps. Now, the third thing I learned in this process was how to work with others. By being invested and engaged and involved in lots of different activities, I started having to work with people. And by working with others, I really started to understand the value of team. And team is an acronym. It's actually a couple of acronyms, but the first one I want to address really simply is TEAM. Together, everyone achieves more. That is absolutely true if we choose to work together well, right? Obviously, sometimes what happens is we don't work together so well. And there is often a temptation that, what if I just do this on my own? I'll be more efficient. I'll get this done. And that temptation, I understand, it even has some level of truth. But the reality is, when you do that, you stop having the benefit of the fact that somebody else's strength can cover up our weakness. Our strength could cover up somebody else's weakness. Different perspectives may let us look at a problem or a situation in a way that helps us resolve it so much better. And if we don't have a team together, we lose that possibility. So I think a better solution is not to say, I'm going to do it on my own, but to say, I'm going to practice, makes progress, and learn how to work better as a team. Because then you're not only better suited for this problem, but for every future problem you encounter that you can work with that team together upon, right? And that's obviously true with your organization. It's true in our personal lives, our professional lives, all through things. Now, a corollary to that is my fourth point. It's not just how to work with others that I learned in the team world. It's the fourth point of how to help others work with me. Because as people, we have so much more in common than different, but so often we get locked in on the differences right up front. And while it's fair to understand differences can sometimes stand out, the areas that we have in common are where we start building our trust, where we start building our communication, so that we can work through the challenging parts of differences, so that we can get all the benefits that come with the differences. And the benefits are enormous. But here's some of the simple things that we get resolved with those first steps, right? As our differences help us, we need different things to work effectively, right? This became very true as I went blind, and a lot of people had never worked with a blind person. So by knowing how to communicate well with them, to tell them what I need in a way that's healthy, we could start getting the things I actually need so I could be more efficient. And at the same time, I learned the lesson to start looking and asking other people what they need to be most effective. And by providing that, again, we became a more effective team. Now, just to give a real simple example, so often people want to help me, and I love that interest in helping and doing the right thing, good intent. And often they don't want to communicate with me initially because they're uncomfortable or awkward around my blindness. And so they'll do things just trying. For example, if I'm coming to a car, they'll want to open a door for me. And that seems like a good thing. Open doors, good level of courtesy. But when you open a car door, it goes from a flat, smooth to the side of the car to a thing that has a corner, a pointy edge at the end of the door, high and low where my ankles can hit it. And it can be at an angle I can't predict. Whereas if it's closed, it's easy for me to trail along the car, find the door handle, open it, knowing and trailing to all those dangerous points. So it actually helps me to open it myself. Now, if I just say to somebody, I don't want you to open it for me, it can come across as rude. It can come across as, maybe being a little stubbornly defiant, instead of if I say something like, oh, I really appreciate the help. What's even more helpful for me is if you could tap the side of the car so I know where it is. And then by opening it, I can find those points that might be dangerous for me. Things like that help people understand, because they want something to do. So I understand that I provide that with them. I'm going to give some more examples of things like that in communication as we go forward, but just understanding how important it is to learn and build that communication from our commonalities, to build that trust so that we can all share the areas we're different and what our different needs are to accomplish the same goal. Now, the truth in all of that is, I said I started before I was blind and had no expectation. And I had a great life. I was on top of the world. I did as many things as I could. I played every sport. I was in band, chorus, drama club, right? Anything that kept me from doing schoolwork, that's pretty much what I wanted to do. But fortunately, I had a good aptitude of school. And eventually I learned I had to do some schoolwork along the way. And I went to the University of New Hampshire. I got my degree in electrical engineering. I came out absolutely on top of the world. Worked for a year at a computer design company, feeling great. And then in just 2 weeks, I lost all of the sight in my right eye and half of the sight in my left eye as it closed in like a tunnel. And at 22 years old, I was devastated. My world changed dramatically. I felt helpless. I felt hopeless. Nothing fun or meaningful was ever going to be a part of my life again anymore, if you ask me. And I was in the hospital for 2 months while they tried to figure out what was happening. My optic nerves were dying, and they didn't know why. They understand now, and we'll talk a little bit about that soon. But the reality was I was suddenly legally blind. And I didn't even know what that meant. Legal blindness, right? I used to think you were blind or you were sighted. I didn't understand. There's a whole spectrum of sight loss. In fact, 92% of the people who are blind have some sight, right? It's severely impaired. And that's where I was. And it's differently impaired. And I realized that there's often a spectrum in many things like sight loss. People so often want to say something is one way or the other. And the truth is, the more open-minded you are, you can realize there's a whole spectrum of possibility in between. And different people might fall in all over that spectrum, and different people might perceive all over that spectrum. And so being able to explore that more clearly helps you understand the world around you and people around you a little better. But I still felt that same way. When doctors sent me home, it had stopped. And they said, it's probably episodic. We're going to have to watch. We think you're going to lose the rest of your vision. We just don't know when. So I went home, and I, for a while, did exactly what I expected. Nothing fun or meaningful, because I thought I couldn't. And as I slowly had that mindset changed with some encouragement by other people, by the discovery of organizations that'll train you for how to manage blindness. Because the truth is, the moment of change, the moment of trauma is hardest for us when we are confronted with it. And the more we have time to understand it, the more we can adapt and learn how to manage it and suddenly discover that really it's not as bad as we thought. That's why always the next challenge is the most daunting until we faced it. And then we realized that really wasn't as hard as we might have thought initially, right? Going blind was harder than being blind. And I started doing all the things I wanted to do. I started taking this quote from Henry Ford that I really believe in to heart. What he said is, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're probably right. And I started doing all of those things. Now, it's not magic. It's not just believe, achieve, you're done. There's a couple of other key things. You have to be willing to believe. You have to be willing to problem solve, figure out the how you do things. And then you have to do the work, put some perseverance in. Because like most things, if you don't do the work, you're probably not going to get the results, right? It may be possible, but you may not realize that. So real quick about problem solving. One of the simplest examples of problem solving. The first day I went totally blind, I was training for a guide dog at the time. We knew my vision was about to go. My nerves were swollen. I was going to lose that last bit. And I was out there, lost the last bit of vision. I wanted to do something we hopefully all do every day, which is brush my teeth. But how was I going to see how much toothpaste was coming out? And how was I going to see if it went onto my toothbrush bristles? And the truth is, I did a bad job. A lot more came out than I expected, and it went a lot more places than my toothbrush. And I was embarrassed. In fact, I was frustrated. And I have this quote I shared with Dennis while we were working through this problem, right? That frustration is natural. I try to avoid it. I hope we all do. But when it happens, there's an opportunity to become aware of it, because frustration leads to failure. And what we really want to do is convert to curiosity. What can I do? What are my options? What is really happening here? And what do I want for a result? In fact, I suggest, like in many things, there's a really simple method of responding. I call it my ABC method. A, awareness. Realize what's happening. B, breathe. Because breathing does two things. It forces us to take some time. Good deep breaths take time. And it calms us to take deep breaths. which lets us get to the C, consider. A, awareness, B, breathe, C, consider. Consider what you want for a result. Consider what you can do to bring about that result. In my situation, I was at a guide school with other blind people. I asked them, how do you brush your teeth? How do you handle the toothpaste? And they told me the solution I still use today, 20 years later, 20 plus years later, which is that it's my toothpaste. I hold it to my lips and squeeze it into my mouth where, right, it's right where I'm going to use it. I wet my toothbrush and brush my teeth. No spill ever. I have exactly the amount because I feel it when I squeeze it into my mouth. And right, and my bathroom counter sink is probably cleaner than some of yours. The reality is I found somebody who already solved the problem. And that foundation is a great place to start. Now, sometimes we advance from that. We pioneer solutions or we adapt solutions to better suit our situation. But that's it's a fundamental piece of collaboration. It's why you're here at this meeting today, is to do some collaborating on some problems that are facing you. And the more you can learn from others' experiences and the more you can work together with different perspectives to build a vision for how you're going to go about and solve some of these problems, the better and stronger you'll be. Right? Because it's actually a couple of steps of process, right? You have to have a goal of what you want to accomplish, a plan for how to get there, but you also have to take action, right? It's like a GPA for your students, right? A goal, a plan, but without action, nothing happens. So one more example I want to give, because sometimes in all of this problem solving, we have to not only do our personal problem solving, but we have to help others along this journey. And there's an accountability for our own process. You know, walking in Nashua, I come up to the bus and I get on the bus with my cane before I ever had a guide dog. I'm going to have to do it again someday when COVID encourages me to use the bus again. But I get on the bus and I don't just walk down the aisle and beat everybody's shins with my cane. I try to stop right behind the bus driver and I say, excuse me, is anybody sitting there? Because I don't just want to reach and feel every seat. That could get awkward. And I got no response. And I'm a big guy. I'm 6'4", 200 pounds. And I didn't get a response. So I turned and I sat down onto a woman's lap. And I felt really bad. I stood up right away and I was like, didn't you hear me ask? And I was frustrated, right? So I was trying to quell that. And I tried to be polite. And she said, I did hear you, but I never talked to a blind person and I didn't know how. And in my head, frustrated again, I'm thinking, well, the way you talk to a blind person is by talking. But I didn't say that because that's not very polite. And that's not fair, because she was being honest and earnest in her communication to me. I believe her. She never had and didn't know how. So what could I do? I could face this situation many times in my life. And if I don't change my behavior, I'm probably going to get the same result. And I can so easily adjust my behavior by changing how I ask. Excuse me, I'm totally blind, so I'm going to need you to answer me out loud. Is anybody sitting there? Makes it easy, right? And now, if the woman wanted me to sit on her lap, that's a different matter. But I'm going to take the precaution because she might have been knitting, and that really could have been a disaster for me, right? But it's the accountability we can choose. Now, I went on, as the doctors predicted, I lost all of my sight. I went from legal blindness to total blindness, or as I like to joke sometimes, I must be illegally blind now. And that puts me in a small category, right? 8% of people are totally blind. And it's an even smaller category because of those, most of them were blind since birth. So to lose all your sight's rare. And I don't think that changed my perspective. I think it actually enhanced my perspective because I know a sighted world, I know a blind world, and I know the world in between. But that transition to total blindness, it took 11 years, and it wasn't as hard as when I first went legally blind. Why? Because of the things I learned, right? And that's what I'm going to share with you today. We call our presentation Reaching Our Peak Potential. It should be on our title screen that Dennis might have up for you right now. And we say achieve a vision beyond your sight, and we mean that. When we say reach our peak potential, we mean that literally as well as figuratively. Dennis, would you flip slide for me, please? This is one of my favorite photos, right? This is my previous guide dog, the Mighty Quinn. He was a yellow Labrador retriever. And this was taken in January. And just like yesterday, we had snow in New England. There's plenty of snow in this mountain photo, but we're on Mount Monroe. It's about 5,200 feet. It's on the shoulder of Mount Washington. And what I love about this photo is Quinn's golden muzzle is pointing like an arrow up that steep, snowy summit. And his eyes are closed and he's basking as the sunlight makes his golden fur pop against that blue sky background. And yes, I'm aware that I'm hunched over, right? Arms to the ground using that trekking pole for support because it was hard work. But I love the visuals in that photo, how much my boy's enjoying his work, how close we are to that summit. We're just about 20 yards away when that was taken. And I love the things that are said behind that photo, even. For example, right, when you want to reach your goals, right, you sometimes need a little guidance. That's why we work with other people, get a little encouragement along the way. And when we're getting guidance, we're still accountable for ourselves. For example, even my guide dogs leading me, I'm still in charge. If I let them be in charge, we'd be at the dog park every day, all day. That's what they'd prefer. So I tell them where we're going, and I give us commands to work as a team to get there, and they help me avoid the obstacles. And that's part of how we work as a team. Those are the accountability partner roles that switch back and forth, when they're in charge, when I'm in charge, and knowing when is the right time to lead and when is the right time to let others lead is so fundamental to being an effective team. Another thing behind the scenes in this photo is the notion of a mountain itself, right? As we come on a summit, right? Reaching up a mountain summit is hard, and challenge is really a method of having an opportunity to grow and learn. And I love that. The lack of challenge means we're more likely to stagnate. We're not going to be growing and learning if we're not facing a challenge. And I want that growth and learning. I don't want to stagnate. I don't even like the way the word sounds, right? Stagnate. That's the water I'm not drinking on my hikes, I hope, the stagnant water. Here's the thing. Adversity, if it helps you grow, because that's what challenge is adversity, then I want some of that. When I went blind, that was a huge amount of adversity. And a lot of people thought it was one of the worst things that ever happened to me, myself included at the time. But now I realize it was the catalyst that made me start re-envisioning and reimagining all of the possibilities. And I started realizing it was limitless. Since going blind, I've gotten a second degree black belt. I've won 2 national marathon championships. I've won a New England Emmy Award, runner-up for a National Sports Emmy Award. I've written a book. I've been invited to the White House to meet the president. I'm in the National Pro Football Hall of Fame. It's crazy the things I've done since going blind, because that catalyst really worked for me. But the thing is, it doesn't have to be such a stark negative catalyst to make us grow. It can be a positive adversity, which is just another way of saying goals, right? Things that we create, dreams, wishes are goals if we choose to make them such, and then we work towards them. And they can be as grandiose as you want, from climbing a mountain, right? And I've climbed mountains all over the world, from Kilimanjaro to the Andes to the Grand Canyon, or hiking the Highlands in Scotland. But I've also had smaller goals that I can bask in, which sometimes is, how do I prepare a presentation in this virtual environment where I can't see or hear my audience? How do I manage all of those challenges, right? I mean, it's whatever you want it to be, but the trick is take the challenge to get something you want in your life. In fact, there's 3.5 really good things you're going to get. By setting goals, you're going to get something you want in your life. So why not do that? 2, by setting goals, you're going to get the skills and the tools to be more successful at getting these things in your life, right? It's that practice makes progress mindset. You're going to become better at it, so you can then get more positive things in your world. And 3, by doing all of those things, you're going to develop a confidence in yourself that's going to adjust and affect the way you approach things, right? I deal with a lot of risk management, and people so often say, if I do this, what might happen? And that's fair. But it's also fair to say, if I don't do this, what might happen? And when you have the confidence to understand there's risk both ways, and you want to honestly evaluate them, but part of that is saying, I understand that if things go wrong, I know how to adjust and react and work my way through it, so I can take some appropriate risks. I mean, the biggest risk most of us do every day is get in a car, and we mitigate that risk by the decisions we make. So make healthy decisions, but also have the confidence to know you can take those risks and get good results to reach good goals. Now, it's great that I can share all of this with you, show you a few pictures, but I think a video can say even more. So with Dennis's help, let me share a little video clip with you, please.
On December 22nd, 2011, Randy Pierce and his service dog Quinn began their quest to hike all 48 of New Hampshire's 4,000 footers in a single winter season.
It is playing, Randy.
So there's audio with that?
Yes, on this end.
Okay. I'm Randy Pierce. I'm a totally blind hiker. If I told you the numbers of people in New Hampshire that are blind, you'd be stunned. It's an invisible malady. You to tell me when it's over, Dennis. People go blind all too often. They hide.
Yeah, I'll let you know.
I had confidence that I would give my all, but I had no confidence that that was enough.
Four more feet. Coming May 2012.
Okay, Randy.
All right, so it's a lot of fun to have a movie about one of your life adventures. I feel pretty fortunate. I've got a couple of different movies about a couple of different life adventures. It is not a lot of fun to fall off the side of a mountain while a camera captures your tumble. The great news, two bits of great news really, at least from my perspective, is first and foremost, wasn't anybody hurt, right? Ultimately, a little bit of bumps and bruises. But second, it wasn't me that fell. It was a fully sighted friend of mine. And that I'm not happy that he fell, and I'm glad that he's okay. But it speaks to the fact that, right, it's about risk management. Like I said, I don't consider myself a risk taker. I consider myself a problem solver. Some of my friends debate with me on that at times. But here's the thing. We were on Mount Whiteface, just northeast of Lake Winnipesaukee. Gets steep and a little bit challenging, especially in the winter, icy. And I said, I think we should put on our micro spikes, something that grips the snow a little better on the bottom of your boot. He said, I don't think we need them. Well, he believes me now, first, but I hiked down because I had mine on. I hiked down to where he was, helped him out a little bit. And I said, why didn't you put yours on? Because there's no detriment to having put them on, or so I thought. And he said, well, the reason I didn't put them on is because it was so cold. I thought that stopping while we put them on would be dangerous. Well, that's a really good reason. But he didn't share that with me. And if you're going to be a good team, you have to have that honest, open communication. Because had he shared that reason instead of I don't think we need them, we could have said, hey, let's talk about all of the risks. That's that notion of perspective. Everybody sees different risks. And I could have said, well, what's the bigger risk, the cold or the risk of falling? And what could we do to stop either? For instance, we could have done some calisthenics while we're putting those things on to keep ourselves warm while we're stopped. But we didn't get to have that discussion. Now, the other part I asked him is, well, wait a second. We did stop because I put mine on. What did you do while we were stopped? And he told me, I crossed my arms and I glared at you. Well, first off, glaring at a blind guy, really not going to accomplish a lot. But Justin and I are good friends, and we've each made our share of poor choices at varying times. But I broke down with him what he really did was he closed his mind. And that's a trap it's so easy to fall into, right? Because he made a decision. I don't really think we need them, and I don't want to stop in the cold. He had his reasons, and so he stopped factoring it in. So much so that when those reasons were taken away, he still didn't reconsider. If you want to make the best decisions, you've got to be open to always taking in information so that when you learn something that might honestly deserve changing your perspective, you do. And if you stop that process, you're sometimes going to make bad decisions. You're going to sometimes take some tumbles. Right. The other thing I want to share from this video is the name of the video, right? 4 more feet. We did a Northern Presidential Traverse that year. And that means Mount Madison, Adams, Jefferson, and Washington all on the same hike. You're above tree line for 8 miles on that stretch. And you're fully exposed. It's hard. And it had been a hard day. The snow was 20 feet deep in Edmonds Cole between Jefferson and Adams. And when we were closing in on Washington, they were filming. And I didn't know it, right? Lots of people think the name of the film is 4 More Feet because of my guide dog's 4 feet next to me. And that's partially true, but it's a double entendre from this moment. I'm hiking along. I know we're getting near the summit, but it's minus 27 degrees and the wind is 50 miles an hour. And it's been a long, hard day already, and I'm tired. And while we had all the right equipment for puppies and people, I stopped my dog, who we'd been there before. He knew where we were going. He was pulling me. And I stopped him and I shouted to Justin, I'm like, how much further? I didn't really want to quit, but boy, I wanted it to be over a little bit. And he shouted out 4 more feet. right? And that's what they caught on video, right? They thought they were going to shoot this epic shot of blind man and guide dog reach the summit on their own. Instead, they got blind man stops and whines about being tired. But here's the part that I'm really great with, because the truth is I was tired. But what suddenly happened is the moment he told me 4 more feet, remember 6'4", 4 feet is one big step for me. I suddenly had all kinds of energy because one step is easy. We took that step, got our summit photo. It is all downhill from there. And where did that energy come from? That I went from so tired and worn down to suddenly energized. I didn't drink a Gatorade. I didn't eat a power bar. And no, they don't sponsor me, but if you have connections, we should talk offline here later. Right? The energy came from my mindset. If you focus on all the hard things you've just been through, how long it's been, how worn down you are, it's easy to get more tired. If you focus on what you're trying to accomplish, if you focus on how every step forward is getting you closer to your goals, and your goal could really be 4 more feet in front of you. You know, my goals are never visual, but for all of us, our goals are often not visual, right? When will we reach the end of COVID, right? We don't know exactly. We're working towards getting that information, but that's not something visually clear. What we know is every bit of progress towards the end of a goal, towards an achievement, and every milestone we can celebrate is worth it. Put your focus there, right? And you're going to have more energy and you're going to be less worn down from it. There's one better trick I'm going to have time to get to, and I am doing a slightly abridged form of my presentation in respect for the time that we've lost, but I do want to continue from here. So let's change direction just a little bit. And let's flip to the very next slide, which should be Quinn and I. Oh, I'm very sorry. Could you go back one slide? Should be a group of hikers on a summit. Do we have a group of hikers on a summit?
Yeah, we're there now, Randy.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that.
No
problem.
I
wanted to take that deeper dive on team that we talked about, right? And this is a group of hikers on the summit of my last peak for the 48 in one single winter. It's something not a lot of people had accomplished before this, but it's not quite the real summit. We're on Cannon Mountain. We're on East Cannon Summit. So we have an 1/8 of a mile to go to the real summit. And we stopped here for a reason, not just because it's a beautiful overlook with the photo of the Lafayette Ridge in the background, but because at the summit, there's a tram that took all my non-hiking friends and several news crews up because they wanted to cover kind of a historic moment. And I wanted to bear a moment with my team to make sure that they were going to be with me at that celebration. Because in building a team, one of the things that's important, I learned from Maya Angelou, and I want to share with you. What she said was, people will forget what you say, and people will forget what you do long before they will ever forget how you made them feel. Now, of course, what we say and what we do affects how people feel. But we have to understand that how they feel is likely what's going to make them react, remember, and it's going to resonate with them for a long time. And so how can we adjust that? Not just in avoiding the negatives, which I think is true, but in filling it with positives. Now, in this instance, practice makes progress. I've become a good winter hiker. Most of those folks did not join me on most of my hikes, but they all contributed in ways to helping me on that journey. So when Justin and I got to that ledge, we were well ahead of most other people. We were the first ones there. And we said, we could go on to the summit, but there'd be a big celebration. We didn't want them to feel the negatives of being left out, devalued. We thought the whole team would want to feel together, part of the celebration. And it's easy to get your eyes on the prize and forget that in a moment, but it's so worthwhile to have the awareness to say, I'm going to make sure I tend to my team. And I'm so glad I did. Now, I've made that mistake before. I probably will again, but I try not to. And here's a reminder why, because the reward was so powerful. When I waited, the last 2 people up, half hour behind us when they got to this ledge, and they were slumped, shoulders down, heads down, not smiling until they realized we'd waited. And they wrote me letters afterwards, besides being in the photo, about how much this moment meant to them, because it meant we did value them. We did want them to be part of the team, cared about them. Just that factor alone has made them better friends in my life as a result since. Enough so they took the time to write me a note telling me about that moment. It's powerful. So let me take that deeper dive into team that I promised you earlier. I think all of us should have as part of our team, and if you do not have people that fill the roles I'm about to list, I think you should make it a goal to find them, to build them into your world, right? Make it a goal, make it a plan, and take some action. But T, who's your trusted and true friends that you can share anything with? Because I think that's valuable for all of us. E, who is your eager and enthusiastic support, right? Who is your cheerleader? Who encourages you to do things? A, who's your accountability partner, right? The person who says, right, when you're not doing what you should be doing, not taking the actions you should be doing, that kind of really just holds you accountable. We need those in our lives because sometimes we do not do that enough for ourselves. And lastly, M, who are your mentors, right? Your coaches, your teachers, because we need those to help us learn and grow as well. Now, there's certainly more roles, but those core four are a place we should all have as a start. And it's not just the taking. We should probably be serving those roles for people as well. And that happens naturally, but only if we're out there, right? Being involved and connected with people and making sure that we think about how we interact with them to be able to provide that for them, right? They may make that choice of how they use us, but we can certainly choose how we are supporting our friends, our community. And I know you're already making that healthy choice. That's why you're spending your Saturday doing something like this meeting. And I thank you for that. But also think about making sure you have that support team to help you do a little bit more. Now, one of the things my support team does to me is the last video I'm going to share with you. I will have 2 more slides to show you before we're done. But they asked me to do more challenging things all the time. One of the things they asked me to do was something called the Tough Mudder. And I didn't even know what a Tough Mudder was. It's a giant obstacle course, 10 to 12 miles on miserable footing with obstacles that were built originally to test British special forces. And, we have this notion when we do things, right? We learned it from John Wooten. He was an English teacher who was also one of the winningest coaches in college basketball history. But he took it from Ben Franklin. And the quote is simply this: we don't plan to fail, we fail to plan. And so when we went up to this Tough Mudder, we had learned what every obstacle we'd face would be like, and we come up with a plan for how we might approach that to help me get through them. And my team was amazing. We went up into Great Northeast Tough Mudder, and we succeeded on every obstacle. And ultimately, the folks at Tough Mudder teamed up with a company out in the West Coast and said, we want to fly you to California and film you doing this because we think the world should see what you're doing. And I agreed, because remember, that's the third part of that goal setting, is the confidence to believe that I should say yes in many instances. And I went out and did this. And we have this video to show you, but I want to highlight 2 things in it. One, a little bit about perseverance. There's something called, they call it Everest, but it's a quarter pipe. The wall becomes vertical and you're running up a vertical wall and you have to jump and either grab the ledge or your friends. And once they got my commitment, they told me, by the way, we made all new obstacles and we made some of them harder. And I'm like, that's okay. That's part of the challenge. But they made that wall bigger. And the first time I jumped, I didn't jump high enough because it was higher than I expected. So, right, I could quit, but that's not what I do. Right, so I had to jump higher. The second time I jumped so much higher that my hand hit one of my friends under the chin and knocked him over and out of the picture. And my other friend grabbed hold of my arm to help hold me up, but I outweigh him. And I just pulled the 2 of us off the wall, and people laugh as we go tumbling down the wall together. But again, failure is temporary if you don't quit. Failure is temporary if you choose a path of perseverance and resiliency. And resiliency is simply knowing where you are, no matter what it is, being realistic about it, knowing where you want to go, and then making the steps to get there. So you'll see that in that obstacle. But then the big last obstacle, I'm going to let the video speak for itself on. They asked me to climb 25 feet up a platform, brand new challenge, water down below you. They want you to jump out and grab a trapeze bar. And they want you to swing on this trapeze bar as it swings across the water. At the end of the arc, you let go. And as you're going through the air, they want you to ring a bell that's hanging in midair. And they tell you only 1 out of 10 people succeed. But remember that collaboration of vision. One of my teammates did 2 things. He said, look where everybody else is failing. This is where almost everybody falls. We can do something different. And I think it will help you without sight even more. We did, and we had different results. Let's watch that video, please.
I am Randy Pierce, and for about 20 years now, I've been totally blind, and that's gonna make this Tough Mudder a little more challenging.
I'll go back. Second round. Oh, okay, you're gonna roll it.
You know, the truth is, going blind was really hard. I thought everything fun and everything important in my life was no longer possible. And it's just ludicrous to me because now I, climb mountains and run marathons and do Tough Mudders. And our message here really for us is we're out living the life that we believe, right? That there aren't obstacles, there are opportunities.
Tough Mudder, 10.5 miles of just awfulness.
Hey! Come away. Keep moving forward, Randy. I'm gonna go backwards so I can hop better.
I reached up, felt gently, found where the bar was, put my hand not on it so I knew my head wouldn't hit it.
Gotcha.
Good job, Randy, team.
My life isn't about my blindness, it's about the choice I made and how to respond.
Bring your hand down. There you go. That's the swing.
I don't feel bad, I gave everything I could. That's my goal every time, right? The more I invest in life and be in those moments, the more rewards I keep getting. Learning to look at the world differently is the key to really having vision, and vision is always going to be way more important than sight.
Look at this video that's gone viral of Randy Pierce participating in a Tough Mudder challenge, despite being blind. Randy jumped in a trapeze, swung out, and rang a bell only 10% of contestants managed to touch.
Every day of my life, I wish I could see, but I would choose to be blind to learn all the lessons I've learned, to come to this point in my life and have so many great people around me that I wouldn't change it. And blindness, if that's what it took for me to get here and have such a wonderful life, then I welcome it.
So I love the shirts that they gave us that said, "I see no obstacles," because obviously I don't see the obstacles. But I think for all of us, it's how are we going to choose to look at obstacles in our world? Are they going to be what stops us, what make us say, "I can't, I won't, I quit"? Or what makes us realize that we have an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to become something more, right? One step closer to a better form of ourselves. Right? And I obviously choose the latter. The beauty is sometimes an obstacle is so challenging, we do get stopped for a while. But that's when we regroup. People often say to me, right, you're so optimistic, you're so upbeat, you never have a bad day. And I just like to clarify, that's not true. I have as many bad days as anybody, maybe more, who knows? But what I try to do is not stay in the moment of those bad moments. I try to, as quick as I can, find the way to start building positive momentum towards a better place. And that can be as simple as, right, if I have the personal strength, I just get up and start moving myself forward. But sometimes I have to lean on friends and ask for help. Right? There's a quote by Nelson Mandela that roughly says, right, don't judge a person by how many times they fall down, judge them by how many times they get back up. Well, the truth is, I don't really want to judge people. And what I really want to do is know how you get back up. And for me, that answer is, right, look for the strength. Find something that you really like that you can put forward. That's a goal that starts that positivity. It could be a healthy, good cup of coffee in the morning that I love. It could be a call with a friend in which I say to them, I'm having a tougher day. Tell me something positive in your world to show me the direction of positivity. And, honestly, some of my friends don't communicate with me as well as I might like because they say, "Oh, I know what you mean. I'm having a really tough day too. Here's what's going on." I don't want that. That's not what I asked for, because we can go the wrong way. And sometimes they'll say, "Well, wait, I'm sorry for that. Let's try to look at something positive because that's the direction I'm trying to go." And that doesn't mean I can't talk about things that are hard. Of course I can. But when I'm in the worst moment, I have to get myself onto solid ground first. I have to get myself moving forward in a better way first. Now, that said, let's change direction, change strides a little bit, and flip to that next slide of Quinn and I running. And as I said, I've got 2 more slides for you, and we're going to wrap up here a little bit on a change time schedule. So this slide, Quinn and I are running a road race. We actually ran 33 road races together. Guide dogs and handlers did not run road races before this. Just wasn't something you did. You're not supposed to run with your guide dog. Now, I didn't break the rules. I needed to run to get in better shape as a hiker. And I worked with my trainers. Somewhat naturally, it began to develop with Quinn. And it developed so naturally in that pioneering solution that that guide school now has a running dog program. Dogs who love to run and are suited for it are matched with handlers who might want to use them as runners. And it's a marvelous program, right? Because there's possibilities when you start looking at the world differently. It's the notion of ability awareness, right? Don't celebrate what you can't do, celebrate what you can do. And if there's something you can't do and it's important to you, well, then find the way. In this picture, it was 2013. It was the Boston Athletic Association 5K road race. The day before the marathon, same finish line. Never had a guide dog run it. We changed that. And we're crossing the finish line, and I love he's got one paw on the ground, tongue hanging out, just loved it. He could not have been happier than when he was running or hiking. That said, the Boston Athletic Association put this picture up on their website the day after we ran the race, kind of celebrating ability awareness. But I didn't get to celebrate for long, because right after they put that picture up, the bombs went off that ripped that display apart at the Boston Marathon bombing. And the reality is, when people do not learn to communicate in healthy ways, when we don't learn how to resolve differences in healthy ways, awful things can happen, like the bombing. But not just the bombing. In our everyday lives, we have differences we don't resolve. We have communication issues with people we care about. And if we don't take the time to actively and constructively work on those, we can have things devolve into really awful places. So work on them, build that better. That's the message that I always believe in, including in things like this. Understand what went wrong, but put your focus forward, just like I said with 4 More Feet, on the things you can change. How can you do things differently? And there's so many good answers to that process. You have to find the ones that resonate for you. In this instance, I said, I'm going to respond to the Boston Marathon bombing with belief in hope and community. I was going to run the 2014 Boston Marathon. I'd never run a marathon. That was a lot of upgrade for me to learn how to do it, but that was my promise, because I want a community that celebrates the elite human spirit. And that's what the marathon in Boston does. It's not just elite runners. It's people running despite incredible conditions and running for incredible causes. So I vowed to do it, and then I failed. And boy, feigning failure is so important. We can be so hard on ourselves when we fail, and that's not valuable. We should treat ourselves, a little self-care, with the same love we should treat all of the world around us, right? And it doesn't mean we can't be accountable, but there's no value in beating ourselves up. Understand a little bit about what went wrong, see what we can change going forward. Now, I know what went wrong and why I failed, and it was a really good reason. It's an awful reason, right? My boy Quinn got osteosarcoma on his skull. That's bone cancer, and it was terminal. So I wasn't going to be able to run with him anymore. And neither was I willing to leave him while I went to train 16 weeks of training to qualify for a marathon that's going to get me into Boston. And then 16 weeks of training for Boston wasn't possible. I didn't know how long I had. And the answer is, on January 20th, 2014, he took his last breath in my arms. And I kissed my boy on his head. And I made a different promise to him, because it's too late to qualify for Boston at that point, or to get into Boston. But I promised him I'd dedicate the next year to him, because that's a promise I could keep. And I did. And in that year, I ran 2,020 miles. My charity is 2020 Vision Quest. It seemed appropriate. I ran my first marathon to qualify for Boston in May. I went out and won my first national marathon championship that December. And then I came back, and if you'll flip slide for me, please, Dennis. In 2015, 1 year late, failure is temporary if you don't quit. I ran my first Boston Marathon in 3 hours, 50 minutes, and 37 seconds. My PR is 3:25. But what's most powerful isn't the timing. It isn't the finishing of the Boston Marathon. To me, it's this story that came out of that finish. I ran the Boston Marathon. I dedicate every one of my marathons. 1 mile of the journey goes to someone who made my life better. My wife always gets mile 1 and 26 because she deserves double. But Quinn got mile 20 to 21 in 2015. That was Heartbreak Hill. And that year, the temperatures were 42 degrees, the wind was off the ocean, and it was raining, which is not ideal. And I'm a big guy, so the wind hits me just full out pretty hard. And most marathon runners are smaller, partially for that reason. It's a lot of weight to carry, a lot of wind to deal with. But after I'd finished running, I got forwarded a blog post by a woman I didn't know. But what she said was this: She said, I was at the base of Heartbreak Hill. It was pouring. I was wet. I was cold. I was miserable. And I was ready to quit. When this big guy ran by me with a line of people drafting behind him. And I thought to myself, if I got in that line and let them break the rain and the wind, if I could get up this last hill with that support, maybe I could make it and finish this last Boston. And as I did that, and I'm in that line, I realized he's holding a cane and there's a woman guiding him. He's blind. And when he got to the top of the hill, he tipped his head back into the storm and he shouted, I love you, Quinn boy. This hill could never break my heart, which is exactly what I shouted. She said, then the two of them sped off, and I don't know how they did it. I don't know what made them so strong, but I wish I did. So I told her, I sent her an email, and I'm going to tell you. The truth is, I am not strong every day, every marathon. I have plenty of moments of weakness, right? And that's okay. In fact, in 2018, with worse weather, just after that point on Heartbreak Hill, I stepped out into a medical tent with my core body temperature at 92 degrees, and I did not finish that year. And that's okay, because it was the smarter choice, right? Risk management. But otherwise, I've finished every year since that year, and I'll run many more. But what made me strong that year was this. I love Quinn every day. He's not my purpose every day, but that day, he sure was. He was on my mind and in my heart, and purpose makes us strong. My purpose is connecting with people to show us the kindness and compassion, communication, and the skills that can fall out from that can make us a better world, and we can accomplish so much more. And I want to do that. I want to live it. I want to emulate it. I want to encourage it. And I want to show some valuable lessons that I learned improving my vision by going blind. And there's a lot more I can share on that topic in many different ways, but this is a core basis of that. Right? Purpose drives us in ways so that work isn't work. It certainly did that day. Right? Your purpose in your lives, in your work with Eastern Star, probably has the potential to drive you, but sometimes we get worn down and we lose track of that. Dig into your purpose to get your strength, and I think you'll be happier for it. I'm going to have one final point on one final slide, but I do want to offer a few moments if there are any questions. I know our schedule has gotten turned a little topsy-turvy with our crash. And Dennis, I'm going to give you a second to see if there are any questions out there for him.
Yep, I'm asking now, but there are a few seconds behind us, so it'll be a couple seconds.
And while that second is, could you flip slowly, slide by slide, to the picture of me on the summit of Kilimanjaro, and you'll know it because it looks like the sun is rising and it looks like I'm on Mars. It's slide 17, if that helps. We'll sit there while we're taking questions. And I will have one final point to share with you all on my very last slide, which will follow this Kilimanjaro one.
This slide has this sunset.
Yep. Well, it's not just a sunset.
Okay, yeah, you can explain more in a minute, but I just want to make sure I got the right one. Okay.
Well, right. It's not. It's actually a sunrise, right? So it's all rocky soil. It's flip back one and tell me what you see.
Right now, I'm looking at. I just saw you holding a bird.
So go forward one, not that slide. Go forward one more.
There we go.
Now you have Kilimanjaro. You can tell the difference now, right?
Yep.
Thank you very much.
There's
only one slide left, and that's the one I'll go to for my final wrap-up point.
Okay.
Which will be about 2 minutes. And I know we're at 9:45, or probably 9:46 now. So while waiting for those questions, I'm going to share a little bit about Kilimanjaro. And Dennis, if you get a question, please interrupt me, okay?
Yes, sir.
So we're here on the summit of Kilimanjaro in this photo, and I share this because right on the summit of a mountain is a great place, right? Your work's not done, like summits of anything, right? We get a celebration, but hopefully that work's not done. On the mountain, we still have to climb back down. Kilimanjaro, you start hiking at midnight from the last base camp because they want you to reach the summit as the sun is rising so that all of the most challenging time is in full daylight if they have to get you out. It also keeps things a little bit easier in lots of ways, but it's beautiful. You can see the curvature of the earth. There's an enormous glacier in the crater, which Kilimanjaro is a volcano, so it's a crater on the inside, and you're walking along the edge of the Kaibo crater. And we just stop at this summit, and we get a chance to reflect and review and revise all of the things we had in our experience. And I like to do that on a lot of moments, which is why I take the questions here at a moment of reflecting and reviewing what we've learned together or shared together.
Randy, I don't see any questions at the moment, but people are saying you are definitely an awe-inspiring inspiration.
Thanks for those kind words. I have a book called See You at the Summit, My Blind Journey from the Depths of Loss to the Heights of Achievement, where I share a little bit. Amy, I believe, has read the book and might be able to share a little more on that later. But since there are no questions, I'm going to honor your time, and I'm going to flip to my last slide and my final point. This is in the Andes Mountains of Peru. It's Mount Vinicunca, but it's also called Rainbow Mountain. You can see why it might be called Rainbow Mountain. And I pause here for my last point, which is just this, to kind of summarize everything. You know, people say all the time to me that I'm so lucky. I have all these incredible experiences and I have such an amazing life. And I believe there's some truth to that, that I am very fortunate in the friends and company I keep and the things I get to do. But it's certainly not just luck, right? I have wishes and dreams, and I don't just leave them there. I make them goals. And I don't just leave them at goals, right? I take the time and effort to make it a plan, and then to practice on it, to prepare, right? Because preparation is important. Seneca, the Roman philosopher, used to say that opportunity meets preparation. That's what luck is. Luck is when opportunity meets preparation. And I think that's often true, but there's another step too, right? So I take those wishes and dreams and make them goals, and I plan and prepare, and then I take action. And that's the step that so many people miss, is to do something about it. When some good friend says to me, we should get together sometime, I say, sure, I got my calendar out, let's pick a date. And we can move that date, but at least we've picked one, right? Because if you don't make the steps, sometimes it'll never happen. And then there's one more thing I want to share about that, is that, you know, John Lennon made famous a quote, it's not his, but he made it famous, that life is what happens while we're busy making other plans. And, you know, I understand that, right? COVID happened to us, a little crash in the middle of this presentation happened to us, blindness happened to me. And that obviously changed the course. And all the things we can do to learn to respond to those things properly, not react to those things, right? ABC, right? Be aware, breathe, and consider how we want, so that we aren't just reacting emotionally, but we're responding thoughtfully in how we're going to do things. And that's all valuable, right? Because we influence our lives with everything we do. But it's not just that we influence our lives. When things happen to us, we can evaluate how we're going to respond and be aware that the choices we make in how we respond are probably the ones that'll have the bigger influence on our lives. And that's an important realization, because it comes with an accountability. Make your choice knowing your choice is going to be responsible for a lot of the results of how your life goes. But it's not just accountability and responsibility, it's also a reward, because you'll not only get the duty of doing that, you'll get the return reward for the choices you make. And that's what my life's been about. And one more thing back to John Lennon's quote, right? Life is what happens while you're busy making other plans. I think he misses the boat. Other things happen to interrupt us, but life is very often, most commonly, exactly about all the things we choose to plan. And if you don't plan, your life is often going to be about nothing. Now I get it. You guys aren't doing that. You are making plans. That's why you're here, to make sure that your work with Eastern Star can continue and blossom and have the impact that you believe it can and should have on your lives and in the lives of all those that you can positively affect. I'm grateful that you choose that path, right? I'm hopeful that you will continue to find a way that will make it successful for you and those that you can reach. Right? And that's how I approach my life. And I love my life, right? My life is very successful and I do all the things I want to do. But today really isn't about me. It's about each and every one of you. What you're going to get out of my talk and the things that resonated with you that you choose. And what are you going to get out of the rest of the things you experience today, and how you apply them in the ways that you work with each other, in the way that you grow this organization, in the way you grow yourself personally, professionally, and philanthropically. I think if you do some of the things that I've shared, you may find that may help you to live a life that is as good for you as mine is for me. And that is my best wish for you. I hope I get to see you at the summit. Have a great rest of your day. Have a great year. Thank you for letting me share some time with you.
Randy, one last question was, could you reiterate the name of your book?
Sure. It is called See You at the Summit. It's available in Amazon in ebook, paperback, and audiobook. And you can always find it on our webpage, which is 2020visionquest.org. And it's See You at the Summit. The subtitle is My Blind Journey from the Depths of Loss to the Heights of Achievement. If you've enjoyed what I've shared, find me on the web, write us a review on LinkedIn, reach out to me if you want to follow up on any part of this.
Thank you, sir. For everybody,
thank you, everyone.
For everybody else still on the YouTube channel, we will be getting up the next videos very soon. They may be a minute or two late, but they will be there, and hopefully we'll get back on schedule by the end of them. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for being here today, Randy. You were definitely an inspiration.
Awesome. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Amy, for coordinating.